All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, so much for that young Baltimore Orioles dynasty that some people were anticipating. And when I say dynasty, I mean as far as them being a consistent playoff team. We saw the Orioles win 101 games. They came out of nowhere to do it. Well, let me rephrase it. They were building up to it. They won 101 games back in 2023. That was fresh off of just losing 110 games 2 years prior. Okay, they got to the playoffs. They were swept that year in the ALDS by the eventual World Series champion Texas Rangers. Last year, we saw Baltimore win 91 games. They got in as a wild card team, and they were once again sent home without winning a game. Now, the expectation was Baltimore would once again contend for a postseason spot in the jumbled American League this year. However, the Orioles find themselves in an all but too familiar position for this franchise. As right now, the O's are in the basement of the American League East. We just saw the Orioles get swept at home by the rival Washington Nationals to drop their record to 15 and 30 as they are left to search for some answers at about the quarter point of this MLB campaign. Baltimore has not won 3 games in a row at any point this season. And you got to go back to May 2nd for the last time that the Orioles even won 2 games in a row. They've dropped their last 6. They were swept at home by the Minnesota Twins. And of course, like I said, they were just swept at home courtesy of the Washington Nationals. So in the 6 game homestand, Baltimore was 0-4. Where have things gone wrong so quickly for the Orioles? Well, some might say, all right, they didn't re-sign Anthony Santander. He got that 5-year deal from the Toronto Blue Jays. Okay, I get that part, but I mean, Santander is not having a great season for Toronto. Now, one thing that we did know, last year we saw Baltimore make the trade for Corbin Burns from Milwaukee, and you knew that Burns was not going to be there long term in Baltimore. Why? Because I didn't see the Orioles paying him big bucks. The Orioles really don't pay guys big on the free agent front. And when it was all said and done, of course, Corbin Burns went to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, with that said, Baltimore's pitching has been horrendous this season. Their 5.42 team ERA is the worst in the American League. I mean, you look at veteran starting pitcher Charlie Morton, in my opinion, he's finished. Okay. You look at it, it's just that neither he nor the Orioles know that of yet. But I mean, so far, you look at Morton as an example. He's 0-7 on the season with a 7.68 ERA. He's basically up there throwing batting practice every time that he takes the mound. The Orioles are not hitting like they were expected to this season. They have one of the worst offenses in the American League. And again, when you're 15 and 30, there's not a lot of good things that you have been doing so far this season. I think, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues for Baltimore, they really weren't active in trying to make this team better over the offseason. And then B, where's the veteran leadership in this locker room? You're relying too much on the youngsters. And I know that there's some young players on this Orioles team that do have talent. But nonetheless, you're relying too much on the youngsters. You need some veterans in that locker room, and they simply haven't done that. And it was one of those for me when thinking about this at this point last week, for an example. I said, you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if sooner rather than later that Brandon Hyde, the manager of the Orioles, became the fall guy of this. And sure enough, what happened at the beginning of this weekend, Hyde was let go as old skipper. But again, the issues with the Orioles are bigger than Brandon Hyde. I think they fall into the lap of the front office and most importantly, general manager Mike Elias. And like I said before, Where's the leadership on this team? More importantly, where's the leadership for this franchise? The Orioles franchise just simply cannot get out of its own way. I mean, yes, they made the playoffs in each of the last 2 years, but you got to go back to 2014 to find the last time that this team won a playoff game or a postseason series. For that matter, I know they have new ownership in place in David Rubenstein. He's been a fresh breath of air in comparison to the Angelos family for so many years. But you know, Baltimore is spending somewhat. I mean, they're 13th in payroll this year, but still, Baltimore is not going to be a franchise that's going to go out there and spend big bucks in free agency to try to improve this team. I know that Rubenstein wants a salary cap. Will it happen? There's a possibility. I mean, there's probably more owners in the room in MLB right now that want the cap in comparison to the way that things certainly are. Clearly, Rubenstein, he's a new kid on the block as far as that room goes, but you've got a lot of older big players who have been around the block as far as team ownership in MLB that definitely want it. But nonetheless, you can want the salary cap, but you still got to spend and you still got to go out there and compete. And I think the biggest issue with the Orioles is still a lack of leadership within this organization. Okay, that's just my opinion. There's an older generation that remembers, when the Oriole way was a big part of Major League Baseball because of the way that they brought up guys through their system and the machinery just kept going on. And it has not been that way for quite some time. And you think about it, prior to winning the division in 2023. It was just a litany of fourth and fifth place finishes in the AL East for Baltimore so long that dated back to the tail end of Buck Showalter's time there. I think the Baltimore Orioles, I mean, again, it's unfortunate because it doesn't seem like it because we're talking about a 162 game season in Major League Baseball, but it could get away from you very quickly. And this is what is happening with Baltimore right now as this season is getting away from them. They're 15 and 30. They're 11 games out of first place. They could be 11 and a half, depending on what happens with the Yankees tonight as they play the Mets. But nonetheless, it ain't looking good for them in the American League. You look wild card picture, they're 9.5 out. Only the White Sox are worse than them in the American League. And again, there's not a lot that Baltimore has been doing right this year. And again, it's one of those you fire the skipper, okay, after Friday's loss to Washington. And then what do you do yesterday in your first game with a new manager? You give up 6 runs in the top of the first inning to really put you behind the 8 ball. And of course, Baltimore never recovered. Solid fan base for this franchise. They deserve a lot better. But it's one of those, just like winning is infectious, so is losing. And the Orioles, they're just playing like they expect to lose right now, and the results are there. They've got a 7 game road trip coming up. I want to see if this team competes. They're on the road to take on Milwaukee, who hasn't been playing well themselves, and then they're going to be at Fenway over Memorial Day weekend. So let's see if things change from there. But nonetheless, this Orioles team has dug themselves into a hole early on this season. Like I said before, they're not really doing a lot of things right. They're not hitting, they're not pitching, they're not fielding. And when it's all said and done, that is why you have become once again one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball. Lack of leadership in this locker room, lack of leadership within this organization. Again, there's talent there, but if you don't have the pieces in place to cultivate that talent, these are the results. Disappointing season so far for the Baltimore Orioles. Maybe they can get it turned around, but at the end of the day, I ain't holding my breath on it. That's just the way it is. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking this 300 pounds of sports knowledge podcast out here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw, please feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. Like I always say, it is greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 pounds of sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. Also, if there is a team or topic or player that you want to hear or discuss, please feel free to drop some messages to me. And it's something that we could definitely work on in the future. If you're on Instagram, just like it is with the X, you can check me out at 300 pounds of sports knowledge. You give me that follow, I'll give you that follow right back. Also, check me out on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, shameless plug, but it's one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.